This is going to be a fabulous time. I'm telling you, you are going to freak out. Fossils of terrifying monster sea lizard found in Morocco. All right, and they're talking about this gigantic, terrifying monster. Look at his head with all these terror. Well, guess what? They talked about these things in ancient past too. All right, here's the deal. In ancient past, they had drawings of all of these kind of monsters attacking ships and everywhere. They were everywhere in the oceans and in the seas. And they had tons of drawings of them and portrayals and stories of how they ate ships and everything else. They were huge. Just like look at this one here. The thing is eating a ship. Now, they weren't kidding about this stuff either. This was actually happening. And it was due to these creatures like they just found in Morocco. Well, where did those creatures come from? Why are they? I can tell you where they come from. You're gonna another time. Get ready. It's gonna freak you out. Okay, I'm being very serious, extremely deadly serious. Every creature, even you, has parasites and worms or all kinds of things. They're in your blood. They're on you. They're everywhere. And they're tiny little things. You don't even know they're there. We don't have any idea they're there. You know, you go in and get tested in a hospital to see if you have these parasites or, fungus or whatever it is. But they're living little creatures that are on you or in you. Well, if you had a gigantic creature, they would have the same thing. Only the things that they would have would be gigantic. So where would they go when that creature died? Well, they would go in the ocean. Okay, my friends, pay close attention because I am shedding a completely new light on sea serpents. Mythology is loaded with them. I mean, it's saturated with sea serpents from everywhere around the world. They have drawings of them, paintings everywhere. This was not myth. They were there. Now, a sea serpent or sea dragon is a type of dragon sea monster described in various mythologies, most notably Mesopotamian with Tiamat and the Leviathan and so forth, and Jormungandr and the Norse and the Greek they all had the same stories of a giant dragon. Now, this is what I am going to show you in a second, is the chief god, the top god in the role of the hero slaying a sea serpent is widespread in ancient Near East and Indo-European mythology. All right, and it's Leviathan, Yahweh, Tiamat, Marduk, all of those things. These were the original gods. And one of them was a dragon, for absolutely certain. And that was Typhon. And I'm going to show you Typhon, and then I'm going to tell you that Typhon was the source of all of these sea serpents. Now, wasn't an isolated case. They were everywhere. They were eating ships. They were eating people. There were all kinds of different crazy-looking monsters that were in the oceans. And they were eating people. They were eating ships. They were just crazy things, and everybody was drawing pictures of what they had seen and recounting what they were coming up against. Now, they only started really running into these a lot as the merchant shipping started. Before that, they don't seem to be recorded quite as much. All right, I know this is hard to believe, but these are parasites. These kind of things are in you and on creatures. They crawl around on you. They're all kind of crazy looking things. And if they were huge, you'd call them monsters. Absolutely. Look at that thing. Look at this thing over here. And that they're everywhere on a creature's body. You just don't even know they're there. Most creatures have them, and nobody knows they're there because they're just so tiny compared to the creature. And the same thing that we're seeing in the dragon. The dragon's over 1,000 miles long. So let me just show you something that's right here in my yard that could crush one of these sea monsters with its hand. Right, remember we talked about the terrifying giant sea little monster. Well, here it is right here. That's his head. Now, I have a body part from a giant human being, and it's been DNA tested, so there's no question about it, and it's anatomically perfect, and the DNA that came out of it was excellent quality. And its thumb, or its finger, it's actually a finger tip. This much of a fingertip is 3 feet long. So I don't know what this is, maybe 5 feet long. Just one fingertip. You can grab a hold of that thing and crush its head just like a tick. And that's the giant that's in my yard. Okay, take your time and look at this carefully. This is a fingertip. That's the front of the fingertip. That's the back where that pad bumps right into the next bone, and they rub against that so it doesn't scrub on bone to bone. These are the blood supplies. This is literally the fingernail. Just take your time and look at it. It's a little bit eroded down in this area, but it's quite obviously the fingernail. And I broke this piece right off here because you can't get DNA out of what they call grip skin. It's dense and there's no DNA. So I had to break this piece off. And when it came off, the fingerprints came with it. Now don't forget, this is the curve of the fingernail. And I went bam with a big heavy duty hammer. It popped right off like it was just glued on. Okay, I told you I have a huge human body parts. I have several parts from this. Well, I have a lot of it from this, to be honest with you. It's laying all over. Okay, this is DNA tested, and it is human. And I had to break this off, which is the fingerprints, right next to the fingernail, and to get down inside to where there's blood. See, this is just like a big rubber pad, which is this, and it popped right off. Here it is right here. This is the same thing that we're looking at right there. Listen to this. You hear that? That's sarsen stone. That is a really, really hard stone. We're going to look at this in a microscope. I should be able to show you some blood, even in this part, which, again, it peeled right off, just like, look at it. But there'll be a few little spots you could find a little blood in here, and I'm going to try to put it in a microscope and show you. But that's what came off right there. And then I went down inside, and they said it was excellent quality DNA. All right, this is on the back of this finger chunk here, and there'll be a couple little tiny spots in here. I put some water on there, but there'll be a couple tiny spots I'll be able to show you where there has to still be a little tiny bit of blood flow up into there, and that's what this will show. And then I'm going to show you my fingerprint, because this is right there is where the fingernail was. Your fingerprints start almost immediately. You don't realize it, but there's a little tiny strip of skin, and then your fingerprints start almost immediately next to your fingernail. All right, now compared to this enormous creature, the fingerprint that I showed you would come down from here to about here. Just the fingertip. So think of what I could grab that thing and rip its head right off. These were tiny compared to the creatures that were alive at this particular time. And that was likely some kind of bacteria. All right, this is going to be a little of a moving object here, but this is the bottom of my fingernail, and that's the corner near right what I broke off of the other one. You see how your fingerprints start right here? They start right there. This is only like a bazillionth of an inch away. And on mine, you see, you can start to see them showing exactly identical to what I show. I'm sure it's very hard for you to see that. But that's about the best I can get it to show up. Different lighting seems to wash it out too much, but anyway, that's the pattern of the fingerprints right next to that area right there, and I'll show it to you again. I showed you in the microscope. My finger. This is right at the very curve at the bottom of my finger, right there. This is just a little tiny I'm going to show you the blood in a second, but this is where the the fingernail, it's separated from the fingernail. That's skin, and then used to go into the fingerprints, which I showed you. Now, this is broken apart. I put a little water on there. There's a few tiny little blood vessels I can see in here. I'm going to try to look into the microscope and see if we can see any blood in this. But this is the thickness of the skin. That's the thickness of the guy's skin. And this is what they call sarsen stone. It's very, very tough stone. Okay, out of this whole underneath of this fingertip, this is the underneath side. This is not wet. This one is wet. I have like only 2 spots I can show you. One is a red blood, I believe is right there. And this is where the vein blood came in and out. There's 2 little tiny holes. And this one's wet. Again, you're going to see it kind of shiny. Hold on, I'm going to go up here. There it is. You see those 2 little holes? Those feds or pulled back some kind of fluids. There's very little of anything in that grip skin I showed you. There's almost nothing there. Now let me get the other one. I think I can show you an artery. All right, this is right on the very edge of the underneath of the finger tip. And there's red blood in there. I could show you that. I could turn it more red. But this is the kind of really gnarly stuff that makes up grip skin. Really tough stuff. Alright, before we get too deep, I want you to know this is where the dragon is. And this is a gigantic dragon. And this is exactly what Apollodorus wrote. Now, I outlined them here, so you come back to this picture if you need to. This is his throat, runs all the way down to his body, which I will show you in a minute when I wipe off all this stuff. His throat runs here. There's all kinds of armored scales all the way down. This flashy, fluty stuff is the kind of thing you see in the parades in China and all over Asia. He has the red flared eye, all kinds of trailing stuff hanging off and feathers and it looks like to me and hair and whatever. This is the runoff of a dead decomposing body. It's called effluent. The red and the black is the colors of blood. And he bled out in the desert and died due to a gash. Recorded in history. It's all recorded. He was trying to kill this fish, which I will show you the fish after I wipe everything off. All of this stuff is really nasty toxins. And I will show you it comes out of the dragon's beard. Alright, so remember this shot. Come back to it if you need to. Okay, here's the same picture without any of the highlights. Remember, I said that's his nose. It comes up. There's his flary little red eye. This is his throat that runs all the way down. Let's zoom in on his throat. Alright, you see that? That's the throat right there running down. You see that? It just continues all the way down to his gut. And protecting that throat are these armored scales. And they run all the way down to his gut as well. And they are being eroded off. You see this is running out between the scales? And this is way down, oh, this is about 800 feet lower than it is up here, because it died on top of the earth. This is not that long ago. Now these are plated in chunks so that he could move his neck up and down. This is typhon. And it runs all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. And you see all that flashy, fluty looking stuff on the side. And right there is a gash. And that was written about. Very, very well recorded in the Greek myths. What happened was they had this encounter and Zeus cut his throat. And red blood creates the greenest green there is. And that is red blood running out into the desert. And it still has the remnants of the red blood, which is, and here it is right here, running into the desert. All right, the black is the vein blood. This is not as productive. Well, it's not productive at all, to be honest with you, that I can find. Nothing seems to grow well in this except lichen. But the red blood, whew, you can't. It grows like anything, like real reds. All the green moss basically just loves red blood. So here we are. There's the head. All right, remember the head I showed you? The red eye is right there. See it flaming back, and that's exactly what Apollodorus said. He said, "This exactly what I'm going to show you is exactly identical to what Apollodorus wrote." The neck goes all the way down, and this is the body, and the tail runs all the way across the top. The two legs look almost like the thighs of a human. Now let's go look and see what Apollodorus said. Okay, this is what the ancient Greeks wrote, and this was Apollodorus. He was about 200 BC, and he was an excellent scholar, but they reject him because of all this insane stuff he talks about. And Hercules shooting people with arrows in the eyes, and Zeus, and the lust for Hera, and all this crazy stuff. I mean, it literally is crazy. And Hephaestus, and Poseidon, all of this stuff was real. As far as I can concern now, it was all real. And now we get to the point of the gods. And here's what he destroyed with thunderbolts, and all of them Hercules shot with arrows as they were dying. All right, so when the gods had overcome the giants, Earth, still more enraged, Earth, Gaia herself, had intercourse with Hell, which is Tartarus, and brought forth Typhon, that dragon I'm showing you in the desert. He was a hybrid between man and beast, in size and strength surpassed all the offspring of Earth. He was absolutely gigantic, over 1,000 miles long. As far as the thighs, as his legs I just showed you, he was of human shape. They were looking like human legs. And of such prodigious bulk, he outtopped all the mountains, and his head often brushed the stars. Even just barely standing up, he would have been twice as high as the space station. Now you can read all this stuff. This was all kinds of, he was being attacked by Zeus and pelted Typhon with thunderbolts, and that's how he cut his throat. All right, I forgot to mention this part. His body was all winged, and unkempt hair streamed all down the back on the wind from his head and cheeks. Fire flashed from his eyes, the red stuff I showed you. So great was Typhon. Fire shot when he hurled kindled rocks. He was crazy. He made for the very heavens with hissing and shouts, spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth. When the gods saw him rushing at heaven, they made for Egypt in flight, and being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. And then Zeus pelted Typhon from a distance with thunderbolts and killed him. All right, they have ancient pottery showing this form of a dragon with coils after having the legs of, well, actually the Gnostics had this as their logo. I'll show you that in a second. But this is where the coils came way out. I mean, this thing was just unbelievable. And it covered all of North Africa. And I'll wipe this down, and then we'll take a look. And I'm going to focus in at the skin. I think it might have even been up here. I don't know. It had some giant coils. And maybe they went up this way and that way and over this way and everywhere. But these are definitely the coils. Now don't lose track of the fact that the bodily fluids drained out into the ocean from a lot of these creatures. They drained right into the ocean, and they had the parasites with them. That's what the sea monsters were. Now, here's his legs, the thighs. Coming down here, let's look close at what this is, because this, some of it's obscured, but down here you can see that is actually like leather. It's like ostrich hide. All right, that's not just an accidental sand dunes and so forth. This was exactly what they claimed by Apollodorus. And this was his viper coils that came swishing way around. Now, I don't know if way up by the head they're the same things. This could just be runoff of blood, and I think that is. See up here, it's just a runoff of blood. Not the same stuff. Alright, but the other side is the same stuff. So all of this is just runoff. And that's all blood running off in here too. Now over here though, same coils. You see how they're watching when I get down in close. I don't think these are just sand dunes. I think this was, it's eroded, but it eroded because everything ran off when, I believe, Atlantis collapsed. Let's see if we can see any better shot up here. A lot of this is just digging around until you find something and look, and just you got to keep looking and looking. I find that kind of interesting, the patterns there. I don't think that's just... Give it a second to home in. Well, anyway, if you want to dig around and look around, he was trying to attack this fish. And I believe these are some of his tentacles or whatever you want to call them. He was attacking the fish. There's no question he spit out stuff at that fish. I don't know. I guess I didn't show you the toxins yet. But see, this is more into your leathery stuff. And you see it? Now, at the same time he was grabbing them, trying to hold him, he was spitting at him. And up here is where all the stuff came out of his throat. Now remember I showed you the throat comes up like this and all that fluty stuff. And coming down here, there's the dragon's beards. They have these beards. It appears to me the ones I found seem to have them. And what it looks like to me is they are the source of these toxins. You see those toxins? That's not average just runoff in the desert. You see that? That is some serious chemistry, and it does not look like you want to be playing around in there. Now, what did he do? He spit it down. And where it was down was onto that fish's fin. And here is the fish's fin. Now, I don't know what this black thing is, so forget that. But I believe this was the fish's eye, and here's the fin, the scales all over. It's a huge fish. And again, I can't account for what they're doing here. I don't know where they came from or how they got here and how they lived here. What they ate, I can't account for any of that. But this is his tail, and he's being grabbed by the dragon and then spit at. And that spit is coming all the way down. I just showed you how nasty it is. And it doesn't get any unnastier. Down here, it pretty much starts to combust. And it's starting to do all kinds of toxic things. This is chemistry on steroids. Now, it comes down and it hits his fin, and it eats into his fin something terrible. And then, after going through the fin layers here, it hits his vital flesh. This is what you call the vital flesh. The fins are not the same. But here, it starts killing off all the blood vessels. You see that? That's not just rivers and valleys. Those are blood vessels. Now the black parts are returns. Those are the veins. The red is the blood supply. All right? Again, that's not just... just hills and valleys. And you see, now it starts to go into the vital flesh down here. We're not into that Death Valleys area. We come back up here. As soon as you come out into here, it's dead. And it's dead because of what the dragon spit at it. Now, either we could just walk around in circles and and not believe any of this and keep your eyes closed and your ears shut. It's up to you. But what I'm saying is, off of this here, all of this stuff running out into the ocean ran off of this dead dragon. And there was nothing to eat down here. They decided, well, the guy's not eating anymore, so let's go in the ocean and see what we can find. And that's where they lived, in the ocean after that. And then they were killed off by the mariners, the best they could. And they probably died from not having anything to eat. I don't know. And they're still around. Some of them they're still washing up here and there. They're finding them. They look crazy. And everybody ignores them, but they still could be real. Who knows? Okay, last word. Sea serpents, in my mind, were real, and they were like parasites and little amoebas and things that are in your body that are living in you. And then if you were a giant dragon like that, 1,000 miles long over that, they had to go somewhere to eat, and they went in the oceans. And then when the boats started to go out in big numbers, they started to attack them. And everybody was writing about it. All right, this is the world we're living in right now. It's a refusal of reality, and it's all the way across the board. The politicians, everybody. Reality means nothing anymore, and it's a disaster. Here's gigantic bones. Ancient Greeks told stories of the giants that were true, describing them as flesh and blood creatures who lived and died, whose bones could be found coming out of the ground where they were buried long ago. Indeed, even today, large and surprisingly human-like bones can be found in Greece. Modern scientists understand such bones to be the remains of mammoths and mastodons. Woolly rhinoceroses once lived in that region. But the ancient Greeks were largely stupid and unfamiliar with these massive animals. What idiots. Many believed that the enormous bones they found were the remains of human-like giants. Well, guess what? They were. Any non-human traits in the bones were thought to be due to the grotesque anatomical features of giants, and yes, they were.